Welcome to Let's Talk Today. This is the 5th episode of the podcast. I'm the host, James Euston, and today we're here with Mr. Randall. Mr. Randall is a math teacher at Blue Valley High School. He is also the track coach and cross-country coach. He's married and has 2 dogs. Go ahead and give us a little intro, a little background to the life of Mr. Randall. How'd you get here, all those things?
How'd I get here? Well, I guess my story starts with being a student here at Blue Valley. So I grew up around this area, was a student here, went to Baker University, loved that experience, then had the opportunity to both long-term sub and then go into a year at Northwest, and then came home and teaching here now.
There you go. So I did a little quick Google search on you. Compared to the rest, I did find quite a bit on you. I mean, I searched, Randall, and it was just like, okay, here we go. So I found that you're kind of a nerd. I found your stats and your resume that you have on like Baker University from high school and stuff like that. Your principal honors roll, got the graduation award for like summa cum laude. Summa
cum laude.
There it is. Yep. 4.1 or 4.21 GPA. You ran track here. You played football here. You have some records here, I hear. And then eventually going to Baker, found your little profile picture on Baker University. I also found some funny YouTube videos. I'm not going to suggest it for them to go watch because it was pretty cringy, but there is one of them reading a poem in there. It's pretty soothing if you need like a little bedtime story action. They
were assignments we had to do. This isn't a pastime of mine.
Right, yeah. So what was the assignment to do for this? The poem I found the most interesting. All the other ones were track videos, but...
We had a class that was like reading and education, so we had to come up with like poems and different ways to incorporate reading strategies in any of the curriculum we teach, so it was a learning opportunity.
It was great. It kind of looked like you were one of those like elementary school teachers. You had your little pamphlets here. You know when the teachers used to read with their hands like this so that you could hold the book?
It show both sides.
Kind of looked like that's what you were doing. Pretty remarkable runner for Baker. I saw you had some records there too. And, that's pretty awesome. And then I also found somehow in your bio that you had a wife and 2 dogs. It might have been in your YouTube channel. I don't know. Cool. So let's get in the actual interview part. Okay. Let's talk about how you got here as a teacher after going to Baker, or maybe even start before that of like, why'd you want to become a teacher? How'd you get into that whole profession and then coming back here?
So I grew up in a family of teachers. My grandpa was a principal. My grandma was an elementary school teacher. My aunt's teacher. So I just have a long lineage of teachers. So I always thought it was something really cool. And then when I was a senior here at Blue Valley, we had this opportunity. It was kind of like CAPS, where we could actually get into the classroom and kind of go tutor and see different levels. And I just fell in love with the idea of helping others and working with students. So I always knew I wanted to teach, and then it just kind of fell in my lap with math because I was good at it. I enjoy it. I really like the black and white of it. And now some areas can be gray, but a lot of times it's like, you know what your answer, you just got to do it. Yeah. So I didn't like the subjectivity of the other stuff.
That's actually what I don't like about math, because most of the times I don't know what it is. So then I'm like, well.
See, for me, it's just like a giant puzzle. Like, I know there's a solution, I just got to get to it.
My mom got a math minor in college, and I came home literally yesterday after AP Stats, and I was just like, today was just in one ear, out the other. I don't know what I was doing. And I was like, feel like for me, there's either 2 kinds of people. You're crazy and you love math, or you don't like math.
I feel like
Would you
that's
consider
the same
yourself
with running,
crazy?
though, right?
That's true.
Everything I like, it's super polarizing.
That is
you like math
true.
or you hate it. You like running or you hate it. There's no in between.
That's very true. I don't like running. I feel like we wouldn't get along, but I feel like we do get along.
No, we'd be great friends.
We'd be great friends. You would, man. If I ever want to train something, I feel like you would be a good friend to have. So yeah, you went to Baker. You got an education degree, and then you got a math degree. Was it a master's or was it just?
So they were both undergrad degrees, and one was in education, one was in math. Because I always wanted to like a backup plan. In the education world,
it's pretty easy to get like your standard high school job with just like
And then if you have like a math degree, you could also go into like analytics or work with data for like corporations. So I just wanted to have like both options available.
That makes sense. So then you came back here. You taught at West for how many years?
So West was actually just for a semester.
Oh, that was a semester.
I long-term subbed, and then I taught at Blue Valley Northwest for a full year.
I heard it was kind of a funny situation, you getting back to Blue Valley, so tell us a little bit about that.
So Mr. Jost, who was actually a coach of mine, and we've become friends, actually reached out to me and goes, like, more along the lines of like, hey, like, do you want to come home? Like, we'd love to have you over here. Like, is there any interest at all before we really pursue this? And I was like, I would love to come back. So because of that connection I had with Jost from the connections I made prior to my adult life, kind of just fell in my lap, and then I had the opportunity to interview here, and it's just been a right fit.
So kind of the differences between you being at a school that you've never attended and now you teaching at a school that you like went to, what's that situation?
Ooh, at Northwest it was pretty easy to just kind of go in, and no one knew me, so it was like a clean slate. But here, I mean, Mr. Bacon was my principal. Teachers I had here, like Mallory was my teacher, and just these other guys, like, I actually had as my teachers. So the dynamic has been interesting, how to like view them not as superior anymore, but kind of like as an equal in some regards. So it's been hard.
Yeah.
It's been interesting.
Were you a troublemaker in high school? Did it make it harder to like be a teacher here?
No, like you said earlier, I was a huge nerd.
Yeah.
I crossed my T's, dotted my I's in all my classes. So
okay.
I was pretty flew under the radar.
Right. So let's talk about some of the events you ran in high school, because you were a track geek too. You love running. Love it. I saw many of your track videos. You kind of dominated the competition. So
I like to think
what
so.
events did you run in high school, and what I heard you have some records here, so tell us a little bit about those.
So I ran under Coach Driscoll, so you've probably seen like the Live Like Champion thing. So he was my coach. So I thought I was a short sprinter, so like the 200, the 100, the 400. I actually wasn't. I ended up in college running the 400 and 800, but in high school I ran, everything from the 1 to the 4, with the 400 being my best. When I was there, we set records in, this, and this. But I think I only have one record still to this day here. It's the sprint medley. So it goes 200, 200, 400, 800, and I was the 400 leg of that race.
So compared to like all the races in high school, what was your favorite? Like, would it be
400? Definitely the 400, more specifically the 4x4. At the end of the meets, everyone's just really invested.
Yeah.
You kind of put your 4 best guys at the end and put the whole team on your back, and it was just fun getting to race.
I was gonna say, I feel like most like track meets I've been to, the 4x4 is always the most hyped up.
Oh yeah, they save it for last for a reason. It's the best.
Yeah. So and then you went to Baker, and did you get a scholarship to go to Baker for track? Or was it okay? So
that was
sure
big decision.
Yeah.
Right. Just financially going and doing that helped a lot.
Right. I'm sure you had academic as well as so that helped, I'm sure, a lot. So then did you continue, is that when you kind of made the switch to running 4 and 800?
Yeah, so in high school I did football. I wasn't anything great. So then in college I didn't do football. So they're like, hey, guess what? You're doing cross country now. So I started building like my aerobic base and got to run further distances. So that's when they're like, hey, you're no longer a sprinter. You're like that mid-distance type of runner.
Gotcha.
But it's actually what fit my like abilities and my body style and how I ran better. So it was actually the right call.
So is that how you ended up kind of being the cross country coach here? Is that also because everybody hates running? Like, is it pretty easy to be the cross country coach here?
I feel like that's part of it. They're like, hey, you want to coach cross country? It's yours.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But no, I think just having the love of running, I could transition from knowing my stuff about sprinting and doing a little bit of cross country to being able to coach it here.
Right.
And I'm still learning as we go. But it's just kind of, if you have a love for running, you can make it work.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about why you went to Baker University. I know that you met your wife at Baker University. You said it was pretty quick as soon as you got there, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and then were you dating all 4 years, or tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we met the first day. She was the only girl in our math class.
Is this love at first sight, that kind of
For
thing?
me, it was.
Wow, okay.
She wasn't as interested at the very beginning, but I wooed her over. I mean, in a class of 6 people at Baker, there was one girl. So it was like, I'll be her, her lad partner. We'll work on assignments together.
You're smooth.
Oh, yeah. I try. But then she actually dropped out of the education path and went into counseling. So she's no longer interested in math, but that's kind of how our story met, is we were both 2 little nerds.
Yep.
Fell in love.
Wow, there it is. So she's into counseling now, and what kind of dogs do you have? Because there was a lot about the dogs online.
Yes.
I don't know how there was a lot about the dogs, but...
Love the dogs. So I've had my dog, her name's Nala. She's part Rottweiler. I mean, she's big old 95-pound girl. had her all of college. She lived with me in college, so she was my dog before me and Becca were together. And then we just got a puppy a year ago, little Nelson, because we got engaged at the Nelson Atkins.
Oh, there.
Because we're that sappy.
Yeah, you're that sappy.
We're that couple. But Nelson's a Sheltie puppy. So we have this 95-pound Rottweiler and then this 20-pound, like, small little dog.
Good combo. They work together.
Great combo.
Okay, there
Great
it is.
combo.
So let's talk about traveling a little bit, because I know you mentioned that you traveled abroad in London through Baker. So tell us about that experience. What did you learn about being overseas? Because when I talked to Mr. Mowry, he had stuff to say about, like, kind of being in a different culture and what that does to you coming back to America.
So, like, Mr. Mowry kind of hit on the point where, like, you really learn so much about yourself when you get to travel, and that's the exact same narrative for me. At Baker, we had this opportunity to go and live for a semester in England. So for like 16 weeks, I lived over there. And then in that time, you get to travel to different countries. So we went to 17 countries in 16 weeks, which sounds insane, but like a trip to Greece was like an hour plane ride back, and it was like $44 for me and my wife. Like, you can get to Greece and back easier than you can get to St. Louis here.
That's nuts.
So just getting to travel and like fully immerse yourself in these cultures, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the world, which just kind of changes your worldview on everything. So those opportunities were great, getting to study abroad. And then I actually had the opportunity to go to Kenya. So me and my wife went to Africa to do a mission trip and got to see there and got to go down to like the slums and just see, you know, a totally different lifestyle than we see here. And it just gives you more perspective, really shapes your worldview. So traveling in any regard, I think, is phenomenal. But if you can get out of the country, I think it just adds so much to like your view on the world and kind of your life experience.
So for someone that would be going to a college that offers a study abroad program, would you recommend, like, definitely?
Oh, I think if you can financially swing it, it will be a life-changing experience. But you only get what you get out. So if you go and study abroad and, you know, each weekend you're traveling and trying actual cuisine from those countries, you're going to get so much out of it. Like, and that's a huge reason I went to Baker's, because they offered that study abroad program. So any chance you get to travel to different states, different cultures, different countries, it needs to be done.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talking about traveling, I know you mentioned to me that you and your wife are trying to touch all 7 continents. Is that right?
That's our goal.
Where are we at in that process? How many do we have to go, and what has been your favorite continent?
North America, pretty easy, right? Europe was easy because we studied abroad together, so that was pretty quick. Africa, when we went on our mission trip. So we're 3 down. We have plans to go to Australia this summer, so that would be 4. And then we want to go to like Thailand, somewhere like that. That'll probably be like a post-graduation like kind of gift for myself. And then the last 2 would be South America and then Antarctica in that same trip. So there's actually like a cruise. You port in South America, go down to Antarctica, like get out, build a snowman, whatever. Just say you touch the continent, and then that would be all of them. And I think that's like our big goal before we try to like get a new house or start having kids. Like, we want that to kind of be our next goal before we move on. That's awesome.
I always hear like people talk about like make sure you travel before you start a family, because when you start a family it just gets massively busy. So good goal to have, I think, right now. So yeah, let's talk. What was your like weirdest experience overseas? Like, I feel, since I'm uncultured and don't know anything about like Europe or Asia or like really anywhere else, what has been either your most interesting thing about a new culture or like weirdest thing you saw?
Oh, a weird thing is, right, because American football is so big over here, it's not that big over there. Like, they have their football, but they always have one game in London where, you know, just 2 teams from the NFL go and play there. And then we didn't know we were overlapping at that same time. So we were walking around England and people were wearing like jerseys from like just obscure teams. Like, it wasn't even the teams that were playing. Like, everyone just like loved like showing that they like American football. So it was weird being immersed in a culture that wasn't anything kind of like America, but then just like on one random day just being like surrounded by like all this NFL stuff. Like, it caught me like so off guard.
So funny. Did you get to see any like cricket matches or anything while you were there?
No, I really wanted to, but did not. The studies just didn't allow.
Yeah, my dad has been he used to work for a company based in London, so I had to learn what cricket was to understand when he came back being a cricket nerd. I was like, what is happening?
Another weird thing was, it's like traveling, right? You try to get the cheapest flight here, train hop here to here, and there was more than one occasion that me and my wife and probably the people we were traveling with like would sleep in train stations because we'd be sprinting to get to a train, miss it, and then the next one wouldn't come for like 6 hours in the morning.
Oh
so
my gosh.
sleeping like in these tunnels outside. People probably thought we were homeless just because we didn't plan properly. But
you're just college students trying to get to another country.
Yeah, it was great.
That's funny. All right, let's transition to the Super Bowl, current events.
Yes.
Because unfortunately you're a Bengals fan. I know everybody can boo him right now. You're also a Chiefs fan, so I think we can put our differences aside. I don't really know how that works, but I'll allow it. So who do you think's gonna? I guess who do you want to win the Super Bowl, and is it the same person that you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
So of course I want the Bengals to win. I had a Bengals jersey on all day. I just thought you wouldn't air the episode if I was wearing it. Yep. So want the Bengals to win, and I really do think that they can win, but they've been the underdogs of the whole playoff season. So I think it'll be a good game. I think they're explosive enough to where they have a real shot.
Yeah, I heard you have bets on this game. Tell us.
I do.
What are the bets going?
Oh, if the Rams win, I have to, shave it all off. Straight razor, baby face, all the way down. So I'm nervous.
Is that during school hours? Because I would love to come see it.
Right now it wasn't. So the bet as of right now was I picked the Chiefs and he picked the Rams. And if the Bengals or the 49ers won, it was a clean slate. So clearly I can only lose at this situation. But I'm going to pitch today. I'm going to say, hey, how about this? I get the Bengals, you get the Rams, but I'll let you shave my face if the Rams win. But if I win, he has to do his losing side of the bet.
Which is that the haircut one?
Yeah, he's got to shave it all off.
Oh, gosh.
So we'll see if he takes my proposal today.
Right, but you weren't the one telling him that. It was actually the student telling him that. Right?
Yes. Yeah, this is a hypothetical.
Oh, yeah, this is a hypothetical situation. Okay. Let's get into the deep dive of the teacher life. Like I've been keeping the theme with most teachers, just because there's a lot of, it's been a hard couple of years for a teacher. So how have you been adjusting to that, and what do you think the biggest obstacle for students and teachers to overcome these last 2 years?
To your first point, the overcoming, I think I'm very fortunate with being a younger educator, kind of fresh out of the system. I don't necessarily know what it was like before. So just learning things like Zoom and how to do flipped classrooms, things like that. It's been a learning opportunity for me as well as the other teachers, but I haven't had 20, 10, 15 years of doing it one way. So I was fortunate to not kind of have any difference to know. Doesn't mean it's been easy, but I think the learning curve, because it's new, was okay. But for students, and I think the biggest issue right now is just finding motivation to do things right when people aren't necessarily watching. I think with flipped lessons and recorded lessons, all those type of things, it's easy to watch it on 2 times speed and just speed run it. I've done it a time or two, grad school, but I don't know if you necessarily get out what you should be from that opportunity. So I think if kids are taking the lessons and doing the activities the way they're intended, you can get a lot from it, but it's easy to cut corners when no one's watching. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing plaguing and hurting the student population right now.
Right. So you think there's just teachers know students do that, 2 times speed. So do you think that more students just are looking at school as just more of a thing they have to do than a thing of getting to their future goals? Or is that where is the lack of motivation coming from, do you think?
I think just with life experience, you kind of learn to do things that might be harder in the time because you see the value long term. I think that's a skill you definitely have to work on though. So it's not something that's just innate and kids get. So when you say hey, watch this video and actually do all these practice problems. I'm not collecting it for a grade, but you should do it. They hear, oh, you're not collecting it for a grade. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But just with life experience, you start to recognize the more you put in, the more you get out. So I don't think it's necessarily wrong, and it's not, any kid's fault. It's just human nature at this point in their lives is to take the path of least resistance in a lot of cases.
So as a student, I've been asking this to every teacher that's come on the show, how can I better support the teacher community or any student that's looking to try to help or find resources, or just because I know teacher morale is low, the same that student morale is low. So as a student, how could we basically make that better?
Oh, man, that's a good question. So a lot of teachers would potentially want to get out because of, like, not necessarily their hatred for the profession anymore, but like they're just not feeling uplifted at work. They still like the content, they still like the idea of teaching, but when you're not being filled constantly, it's hard to be energetic about work. So I know for me, just like the small things, like kids like genuinely asking about my day, genuinely taking interest, like, hey, I know Mr. Randall's a Bengals fan, I'm going to talk to him about that game, on Monday. It's those connections that keep teachers going, just like the kids. So just genuinely taking an interest in your teachers, treating them not only as a professional and showing them that respect, but also, treating them like a human and taking interest in them does so much more than what kids probably realize.
I think that's been the common theme throughout every teacher I've asked that question, is they're just like, they came into the profession because they love talking to high schoolers, and they love talking to, just getting to know people. And I think like students look over that a lot and kind of gloss over that you're just the person that gives me the grade at the end of the day. And we kind of like depersonalize you, and you're just like, you're just there to give me the grade.
I mean, teachers only live in school, right? You can see them outside of school.
So I think, that's been across the board, students like just continuing to personalize them as like, this is another person that I'm interacting with daily that I want to get to know. So I think that's across the board. So if you've been keeping up with the theme here, that's going to be a key way to uplift our teachers. So let's move on to the end of the podcast. Okay. We usually end on our vocab word of the day, but I'm going to ask you more for a math term that I either don't know about or I probably won't want to learn about. Like, just give me any math term.
What about a concept? Does that work?
Yeah, that
like
works.
The law of cosines.
Law of cosines, yeah.
So it's a good one because everyone knows Pythagorean theorem, or hopefully you should, right?
Yes, I do, actually.
But the way you know Pythagorean theorem's probably not fully correct because you have to use the law of cosines to get the true Pythagorean theorem.
So a squared plus b squared equals c squared, is that still true?
Well, there's a little component at the end where you do some stuff with some cosine, but it all cancels out. But it's one of those things when we learn about it in pre-cal, you go, everything I've been taught's a lie. So it's kind of interesting.
Law of cosines. There
Law
it
of
is.
cosines. Look it up.
So yeah, we're gonna move on to my favorite section, rapid fire. I'm gonna ask you a few questions and you just respond like that. All right?
Okay, I'll try.
What's your favorite candy?
Kit Kat.
Okay. Favorite meal of the day?
Breakfast.
Favorite brand of clothing?
Ooh, it's like athletic clothing.
What do you like to eat for breakfast?
Bagel and cream cheese.
Where do you shop for your groceries?
Aldi.
Who does the shopping?
Me. All time.
Favorite meal to cook?
Favorite pasta. Spaghetti. Spaghetti and meat sauce.
Spaghetti and meat sauce, okay. Chiefs or Bengals?
Bengals.
All right, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Let's Talk Today. We'll see you guys